John Mateer had something to say that Sooner fans, you definitely need to hear.
You are Locked On Sooners, your daily podcast on the Oklahoma Sooners. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Sooners, and thank y'all for making Locked On Sooners your first listen every single day. Shout out to all the everydayers out there for tuning in, subscribing to the show. You can do that wherever podcasts are downloaded and listened to. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. Go check them out over at FanDuel.com. I am your boy, Jay Smith of Unfair Sports. Been covering OU football, SEC, and college football for the last 5 years. And we got a lot of great things to talk about today. We're going to talk about some struggles in the recruiting game and what Jim Nagy's effect has been on that. But we're going to lead off with this. John Mateer is over at the Manning Passing Academy as a counselor, and he had some honest takes about Oklahoma going forward. He had some things to say about Ben Arbuckle. He had some things to say about Oklahoma, the guys there. And so we're going to jump into kind of some of the statements he had and the things that jumped out to me whenever he had some conversation. So for context, let's go ahead and set the landscape for you all. John Mateer, he's a counselor over at the Manning Academy. And so because of that, him, few other quarterbacks like Arch Manning, you've got Kay Klubnik, Lenore Sellers. We saw a few of them out there. Sam Levitt. We saw a few of them throwing some passes and stuff. So the counselors there at that Manning Academy got an opportunity to see him perform, see them all perform, and, get an understanding of their game. And from there, they actually did some interviews also. And so John Mateer talked with On3/Rivals, and shout out to George Stoya over at Sooner Scoop /On3. And he got some notes up on the social medias. And I want to talk about a couple of things that Mateer said that jumped out to me that I feel like is really relevant to you all. And so he talked about him and Ben Arbuckle coming to Oklahoma from Washington State together. And he talked about them as a duo. And this is what he said. I quote, "The duo, it's huge," John Mateer said. "We understand each other, and I know what plays he's going to call next. He knows what I like. We talk through a lot of stuff this offseason. It's just taking the next step, and it's awesome." And I think that was pretty profound in a way, and let me explain why. John Mateer is now in his third year, going into his third year in this system with Ben Arbuckle. So he's had 2 years of learning. He had a year behind Cam Ward. Then last season, he broke out in college football, 3,100 yards, 800 yards plus passing, 44 total touchdowns. And so his name, and he was considered one of the most exciting players to watch in college football. And why I felt those comments are profound is this. Now that Mateer is further in his academic career, he even mentioned this a little bit later, that his schedule allows for him to be able to, it's not as heavy as it was when he first started college. So because he knew he probably wasn't going to play a lot, he probably took on a lot more classes, it seems like, to where now he's getting to the lighter portions of his graduation schedule if he hasn't already graduated, and he can focus a lot more on the game and the playbook and preparation going forward. When you don't have 18 hours to weigh you down in the classroom, it makes it a lot easier for you to be able to focus all your spare time there on the game. And I think that's what we're seeing from John here. He also talked about some of the players that he's playing with here at Oklahoma and what's got him excited. He mentioned this. He said, "We've got some good players here that can do a lot of different things. It's going to be pretty fun. It's going to be a lot of fun." He jumped in and talked about Jaden Ott and how awesome he is. He talked about Giovanni Gibson and Keontez Lewis. Those were 3 guys that he really focused on in his conversation when he was discussing Oklahoma and making this move. And that's something that should get you excited. He said, "Year 3 in the offense, you can take some more strides. It's really promising." And I like that he said that, because that to me is huge. That is the part right there. Usually quarterbacks make a big jump in their second and third year in the same system. And to me, getting Ben Arbuckle with John Mateer together, it's going to give you all, Sooner fans and college football in general, a huge jump and a lot of excitement and a lot of fun play. Now, you may be wondering, Jay, you've got to also take into account everybody else on the roster. And probably the biggest question there, which is shockingly not even the wide receiver room, is everybody's concerned about that offensive line. And I'm here to tell you, because the offensive line is full of guys with actual SEC experience with a few new players to join into it, this line's going to be way better off now in comparison to what it was last year. I had this conversation with a buddy of mine, and the offensive line for Oklahoma, when it's healthy and it's hitting on all cylinders, is what the Alabama game was. And every single one of you were excited about how we performed against a juggernaut like Alabama. They were still good. They still had the talent on the line. A lot of transfers came in. That defensive line was good. That's what Oklahoma's offensive line looks like when it's healthy and players have experience and ready to play. It took most of the year to get to that point, but we got there. Even the Missouri game, the offensive line looked really good in the Missouri game next. You still had to have offense to provide for it. And the good thing is it appears now that we'll have both with John Mateer leading the way. He's confident in JaVonnie. He's confident in JaVonnie coming back before the season starts. And he's also confident in a Keontez Lewis, who he feels like is very talented and be able to ball. Then you throw in the Jaden Ott component, who we just started really talking up like crazy over the last couple of shows, me and John. And that's mainly because he's the one that will be that X factor that's going to shock a lot of people, because he's going to kind of get forgotten. And it's not because Jaden Ott's not good. It's mainly because Oklahoma struggled so darn much on the offensive side of the ball that we want to see what the offensive line looks like. We want to see what the quarterback looks like. And so since that's the case, the expectation is if Oklahoma's going to be any good, it needs to show it on that side and not anywhere else. And so for me, this guy, I'm telling you now, John Mateer has basically told every single one of you, he's put everybody on notice about this squad. Now, he did talk a little bit about the schedule and the challenges. And the one thing he said to Shea Dixon over at On 3 while he's at the Manning Passing Academy is that I think it's one day at a time, because you start on Sunday, you've got to recover, John Mateer told them, and then you've got to get into the film. And my schedule is actually easier this year than last year, not like playing schedule, weekly, like class schedule, as I talked about before, because he's older now, he's going to have the opportunity. So I have more time to do recovery and watch more film. So it's one day out a time. And he continued to expand on the fact that you can't be looking ahead each week. You got to focus on the team in front of you, and don't even concern yourself with the gruelingness of the schedule. We'll see how tough this schedule is when these teams actually play and actually perform, and then we'll get an understanding if teams are actually as tough as we are trying to make them out to be, right? So, in any case, John Mateer comes out, gives you all a honest take about how he feels about this team, and it sounds like with him and Ben Arbuckle, he's excited about the Oklahoma Sooners going into this 25 season. And I expect every single Oklahoma Sooner fan to also be excited as well. Recruiting has been an interesting up and down roller coaster for the Oklahoma Sooners. We're going to talk about that and the Jim Nagy effect here on Locked On Sooners. Summer sports are in full swing, and whether you're all about baseball under the lights, golf on the greens, or high-stakes soccer action, FanDuel is the best way to make every game even more exciting. You're already following the action. Why not make it a little bit more thrilling? With FanDuel, you can get into the game while your friends are getting sunburned, at the beach. And so it's really easy to do when you hop on the site. Like I'm looking at MLB, going into it. It's going to be some games over the next couple of days you can jump in, and you could even build a parlay if you're like me, who's super slow and forgets to put in those bets for the game. You can, for baseball, you can who hits a home run parlay builder. And you can even do to record a hit parlay builder, 2+ total bases. So many options for you to get into the game and get yourself even more excited. And so if you're new to FanDuel, new customers can bet just $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if your first bet wins. Open the FanDuel app today or visit FanDuel.com to get started. And thanks again for making Locked On Sooners your first listen every single day. Shout out to all the everydayers out there for tuning in to subscribing to the show. You can find us wherever podcasts are downloaded and listened to. And for your second listen, go check out our boy Brian Smith over at The Portal for recruiting updates. He keeps you up to date on any and everything that's going down. So make sure you go and check him out. All right. The recruiting world has been interesting over the last, I would say the entire Brent Venables era. And this is something that I wanted to make mention to a lot of you because this happens every year around June. We have the big official visit weekends. Oklahoma sees some momentum. We had 9 commitments here in June. And fans are still belly aching, whining, and complaining that you haven't seen the big names coming off the board for Oklahoma, or you haven't seen the players that you want, and you've seen players pick other schools over Oklahoma. And so everybody's gotten the belly aching. And I'm here to tell you this. I think Jim Nagy's tired of your whining. And I'm going to keep it a buck. And I say that because if you go on the social medias, Jim Nagy's been pretty active as of late. So when Deacon Schmidt committed on Saturday, we did a video on that. Feel free to check that out here on the channel. Nagy tweeted out about Bill Bedenbaugh and said, Bill Bedenbaugh walks. This is Bill Bedenbaugh walking out of a room after being real with a recruit and their family and actually caring about them. I'm paraphrasing what he stated, but it was a very fascinating quote. But here it is. Bill Bedenbaugh walking out of any OL recruit's living room who actually cares about getting developed for the NFL. And he put a picture, Big Lebowski or whatnot, boom, boom, blah, walking around. And so Jim Nagy is showing you he's very active in the socials. And then, of course, you got these weirdo fans coming out here. I'm not saying all of y'all are weirdos, but some of y'all are, with the whining and complaining around this. And, you come in there and you got things to say. And so Jim Nagy felt the need to take some shots at a few of you fans. And one fan posted on there, Jim is calling out a lot of kids and parents with this one. And he replied back to this fan. And he said, yes, I am. And I say that because Nagy has a particular approach when it comes to how he is looking at prospects, how he is building the recruiting board, how he is wanting the Oklahoma Sooners to go after players. What Nagy is doing is, one, he's looking heavily at NFL caliber ready players. Now, you may be wondering, how would he know this on a high schooler when you're waiting for a body to develop? That's going to be determined over the next couple of cycles. It's going to take him a couple of cycles to really hone in on what he's looking for. But there are kids that do walk in day one that look like they have the talent of an NFL player. Some kids may have hit their peak as far as physically at their senior year in high school. You've seen them who dominated, but then you're like, they don't do anything after that. Those do happen. Some don't hit their growth spurt or development spurt until their second year-ish or whatnot. Great examples are Mason Thomas. We saw the tools with him. He was a 3-star, but we saw the tools and we saw the intangibles there, even though at his height. But then when he got healthy finally last season, you saw, that is what the ceiling looks like. And so we were able to convince him to come back for one more year. And if he continues to do stuff, people have been tweeting out, NFL guys, he's potentially a late first rounder if he keeps that up. I think he can this year because the defensive line will make it possible for him to be effective. But I digress. A lot of you have been upset about that. And so they've been changing how they're recruiting and targeting particular players and what they're prioritizing. You can tell for Jim Nagy, the focus is on getting good trench players, ones that fit specific NFL intangibles, and some freakish outliers if you can get your hands on them, as well as someone to throw the ball. So O-line, D-line, quarterback are really the three it seems like they're focused on. The priorities are there for other positions, but they're not as high. And we're going to talk about some of those struggles there and why I think those exist in the next segment. So feel free to stick around for that. But as of right now, what he's telling y'all is y'all need to chill. Like there was a tweet that was sent out by a fan about some recruits. Nagy posted that tweet about Bill Bedenbaugh. Fan come in and says, can we get some receivers? And Jim Nagy replies back, chill, Sean. That's what the person's name. And he replied back to it. So if you didn't, I thought I was playing. Jim Nagy's very active right now in the social streets. He's understanding the game that social media plays, and he's taking advantage of it. So you see him talking to recruits, you see him talking to fans, you see him engaging with everybody, you see him follow him and his team are following a lot of recruits, the ones that they are targeting and investigating. They're taking a holistic approach to the way they're doing this. And I know I've been lecturing you all about this on numerous occasions, but I feel like this is kind of one of those PSAs that you probably need to be reminded at least once a month that this is how Nagy's going to do it. Now, granted, we don't know how this is going to work out. This is no different than in the NFL or any other sport that if it doesn't work, what's going to happen? Oklahoma is going to look in a different direction. I understand. But this is probably the best experiment for Oklahoma because Nagy has the experience, and we've seen him do this in the NFL as well as for the Senior Bowl over the last, 7-8 years where he was leading that and building out, getting players going to the NFL. A lot of his kids that have gone through that Senior Bowl gotten drafted in top 100. So we know that he knows what he's looking for. He knows what to look for to get players, actually in all positions, that recognition. But our questions will always be, and there's nothing wrong with questioning, but our questions will be, can he do this at the high school level as well? Because the high school level is where you've got the most questions. You've got a bunch of kids who have not filled out their bodies yet. So the Oklahoma Sooners are going to have to look at them, really dissect, and hope that I think this kid is about ready to that point, and we're going to have to go there. So for me, I'm going to keep it a buck. I think that within the next 2 to 3 years, the Oklahoma Sooners is going to be a destination for NFL destined players. Players that want to go play in the NFL and want development, Oklahoma's going to be a destination. And they're going to be the destination spot of the SEC in the next 2 to 3 years. Jim Nagy's putting together the blueprint now. I feel like personally, he's putting together something similar to the way Sam Presti does things. Right. Sam Presti took him 17 years to finally get that ring, but Sam Presti learned at a young age where his mistakes were, and he started to implement fixes as he went. The only thing that these GMs cannot account for is unfortunately injuries. And when I mentioned Presti, the bigger problem for him is that the NBA is 100% a star-driven league. You have to have 2 dudes that can handle the load. And until you get those 2 dudes that can handle the load at the same time, you ain't going nowhere. And the good thing for the Thunder is J-Dub showed up in the playoffs next to Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, who is probably the most consistent dude in the NBA, getting to his 30 points. And you got that. So now for Oklahoma, because the Sooners will only have dudes for at most 5 years, those probably 2 seasons, you'll have a lot of players playing together. You got to make sure that you got the foundation set for year 1 and year 2. They're able to play alongside each other. And then boom, you'll start to see the ascension. So for me, in order to be a long-term competitive team in the SEC, even with revenue share and NIL and everything, Oklahoma is taking the major approach today to not go out there and try to front load a whole bunch of NIL packages and stuff to kids that they ain't sure about, because then they're going to have to pay the piper at the end if those players don't come out the way they're hoping. So if you wonder why Oklahoma is very specific and particular about who they're willing to go heavily into bat for, that's why. And that is all 100% on what Jim Nagy is doing for this team. But Oklahoma has struggled, not going to lie. And Sean mentioned it, is wide receiver. I want to talk about that and my thoughts on those struggles next up here on Locked On Sooners. And thanks again for making Locked On Sooners your first listen every single day. Shout out to all the everydayers out there for tuning in and subscribing to the show each day that we drop. And you can find us wherever podcasts are downloaded and listened to. So the Oklahoma Sooners have been doing a little bit of struggling when it comes to one spot on the recruiting trail. Last segment, we talked about Oklahoma grabbing Deacon Schmidt and Jim Nagy's effect on this. And I think that this struggle that we're seeing is also a component of the Jim Nagy effect. Let me explain. Oklahoma had a few wide receivers they were going after, actually a really good list of wide receivers and defensive backs that they wanted, like a Danny Odom, a Dallas Dickerson, a Jaden Pettit, as well as a Craig Dandridge, and all four of them did not pick the Sooners over the last week or two. That has led to fans revolting. They are losing their minds on social media. Oklahoma's not very good anymore, blah, blah, blah. And I do want to reiterate what I said last segment. If you have not paid attention to Oklahoma recruiting since Brent Venables has been here, one thing that BV has tried his hardest to do is to lock up the majority of their recruits by the end of August. A lot of your 4 and your 5-star guys typically commit July and August. We got Fasusi and David Stone. We got PJ Adebaware. You got a lot of those players all in this point. And the only thing that has slowed up Oklahoma recruiting in that capacity has been that there has been some flux in the quarterback recruiting aspect of it. We had Jaden O'Neal, who was committed for over a year. And so that's where you start to see a lot of haggling on the back end and the quarterback doing recruiting for a school. And then things kind of fell out. And then you had the Bo Bentley now. Now, Bo Bentley has committed here at the beginning of June. And so because he's here at the beginning of June, not really beginning. He came in and visited beginning of June. He committed mid to late June. So now we're on the point where Oklahoma's probably leaning heavily on him to get the rest of the players that he wants to play catch with. The other thing to also remember, the way recruiting is going right now, because there's about to be this massive change with revenue share and everything, a lot of teams are throwing a ton of money up front to some of these kids. And I think it sounds like, to me, I haven't confirmed it, but it sounds like schools are actually paying kids right now as they're committed to the school. And they only keep that money in contingent of them signing with their school as a high schooler. But to me, I don't see why I would want Oklahoma to do something like that. You all would probably complain as fans if Oklahoma did that and then the kid came out here and did not play very well. Then you'd say the evaluations were bad. But at the same time, you're also complaining that Oklahoma's not trying to sign kids right now, which is kind of the, you know what I mean, like it's a lose-lose situation in this for the Sooners. But I think Jim Nagy is trying to address that. I know that Emmett Jones has a type that he wants to go after. He has things that he is focused on when it comes to this recruiting, but also at the same time, I think the other thing to keep in consideration for Oklahoma is look at your depth chart and look at what you have in here. So you've got probably, 4 wide receivers that will probably be gone at the end of the season. Keontez Lewis, Major Melson is still on the roster, so him as well as Deion Burks are your 3 redshirt seniors that we know will have to be gone at the end of this year. Then from there, you've got Jaden Gibson, who's a redshirt junior, as well as JaVonnie Gibson, so there's a chance they could come back. Isaiah Satania is also a redshirt junior, so he's going to be back. But then when you go down, you have a good long list of kids that will most likely stick around for a while. Carry on, Manny Choice, who is young. Jermichael Carter, who's only a junior. Zion Kearney, Elijah Thomas, Josiah Martin, who's a transfer that just got in here. That's, of course, a critical component. KJ Daniels, you still got Jacob Jordan, Trey Brown, Zion Rajan, as well as Jacob Snyder. That's about 11 dudes that are still on this roster that will be here sometime next season. And so for Oklahoma, the question is going to be, how many more players are you going to add to this that will be specifically from high school recruiting? Now, we've got Daniel Odom, and you're going to want to have at least 1 or 2 solid ones, if not get at least 1 big-time one, like a Davian Gross. We've talked about Davian Gross, and we would love to have him on this roster as well because he's a guy that can play both running back as well as play wide receiver. So Oklahoma is trying to get their hands on something like that. Or let me ask you this question. Would you prefer Oklahoma go grab another healthy Deion Burks, who we've seen do well as a player in the transfer portal? Or would you like to get another Andrell Anthony, who was really good before he tore his ACL against Texas, right? Would you like to get your hands on a transfer wide receiver that, gets you excited? I'm going to be honest. If you see the numbers and production, I think you all would prefer transfer guys. Because if there's one thing we know, wide receiver is probably the easiest position to implement outside of running back when it comes to getting a transfer. The main reason is because with running backs, you hand them the ball and you say, find the hole and go. They have an idea where the hole should be. But outside, once they're handed the ball, it's their job to figure it out. In a lot of situations, because in a lot of situations, it's just handed it to them and they go downhill. They find that hole and they go. So it's a little bit easier, right? Wide receiver, it's, can you run this route tree? I can. Perfect. This is your play. Go run these routes. The bigger question for wide receivers, in my personal opinion, is, can you block? Because then that leads to it. Your running back's going to be able to do. And so to me, the Oklahoma Sooners focus, and probably Emmett Jones with Jim Nagy and that entire staff, their focus is most likely going to be, we want to lay hands on guys that have experience. I think we would prefer to have guys with experience instead of going after guys that we are just waiting to see about developing. Now, granted, we will get some recruits. Don't get it twisted. And I think by the end of this cycle, signing day is not until December. You'll have early signing day then, and those are going to early enroll, and then you'll also have the one in February. Now, granted, it sounds like the NCAA is looking to move signing day to the summer because, truth be told, all of your OVs are basically done here in June. Why not just have them sign July 1st and you're done with your recruiting class? That way you can budget out your revenue sharing components right there. And I think the NCAA will implement that for the 2026 season to where all that recruiting stuff, they'll change the calendars and have everything set to where July 1st, signing day, and you are good to go. If that happens, a lot of you will be a heck of a lot more excited because then at that point, the class will be done. I like the idea of a summer signing class because then the teams can just focus on football and it gives us a full-fledged, like a legitimate schedule. And then when December hits, you can focus on the transfer portal and not chasing after recruits and doing in-home visits. That's just my personal opinion. I've always felt that way, and that's just what I was thinking about. But overall, the Oklahoma Sooners, yes, have been seeing some struggles on the recruiting trail when it comes to the wide receiver spot. But the Sooners do have a plan, and you can tell. And it looks like a lot of their plan is contingent on there being a abundance of wide receivers in the transfer portal. As you all know, there was. And at the same time, going after players that already have production and then looking for some young players you can develop in your program that probably aren't looked at as much. I think that long-term other teams will look at these 5-star wide receivers and athletes in a similar light. Now, you're going to have some outliers. You're going to have your Ryan Williams of the world, your Cam Colemans of the world, your Jeremiah Smiths of the world. You're going to have guys like that, your Terry Bussies of the world. You're going to have those type of dudes that will be just so ridiculously amazing at their craft that you can't overlook them. They're going to exist. Will Oklahoma go after one of them? That's a possibility. But I think for the Oklahoma Sooners and the Jim Nagy effect and what they're looking at when it comes to this, they want guys that matter the most to come to Oklahoma as far as their position goes. So a heavy focus on the trenches, offensive line, defensive line, guys with NFL traits, and make sure you got a quarterback that can throw that thing for them. So you want to have a quarterback to throw it, a line to protect him, and a defensive line to go get the other guy. So let's just pump the brakes and enjoy Jim Nagy roasting a bunch of y'all. But thank you all for tuning in here to Locked On Sooners. We appreciate you all being part of the show. Make sure you subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts. And we're free here on YouTube. So hit that like, subscribe, and that bell notification so you don't miss a single show that drops. I am Jay from Unfair Sports. You can find my other channel here on YouTube, Unfair Sports. My guy, John 9 Williams, follow him on the X-Bird. And you can follow his work over at SoonersWire.com, part of USA Today Sports. And for your next listen, check out my guy, Brian Smith over at the portal here on YouTube for Locked On Sports Network. He is fantastic. He gives you all the updates in the recruiting world and all of that. So for my guy, John, we will chop it up with all of you, I don't know, in about a day or two. Boomer Sooner.